Hey guys, welcome to the Rad DudeCast. Thank you so much to you $10 and $15 Patreon subscribers that came to the live show on Friday. We appreciate it. Big show today, big show. We're talking bracketology, baby. March Madness, Anthony. March Madness.
I'm excited. Love the idea of a bracketologist. It's a position in life.
Well, guess what? We got one right here. Greg, bracketologist in charge, my man.
You guys have no idea how into the NAACP I've gotten. I'm a big fan. And man, I only watched a few games. I did, and I watched 2 games.
Wow.
And both of those games, my team won. So I'm pretty excited to see how far this goes.
So what games did you watch?
I watched Cockburn. There's a guy named Cockburn. He's on, I want to say he's on Illinois.
Okay.
His name's Cockburn, but they call him Coburn. They call him Coburn. But his name on his jersey says Cockburn. And I kept being like, are you talking about him? Because I think you're being too polite by calling him Coburn, because his name is Cockburn. It says Cockburn, and they kept calling him Coburn. I think he was on Illinois, and I don't remember who they played, but in that I think they played Loyola, and I picked Loyola, and Loyola won. And I picked Loyola because it sounded like Layla, which is an Eric Clapton song, which I love.
So you had Cockburn going up against Loyola, and you picked Loyola. So let me ask you a question, because Greg has told me that his bracket is perfect thus far.
Well, the 2 games I've watched.
Okay, so that's what I was going to try and get to, because I read this article. I read an article that with all the upsets, like in the whole country of electronic, bracket pools, there's like only 6 perfect brackets left, and then I get a text from Greg that his bracket is perfect. I'm like, fuck, call the fucking news. But it turns out you just mean in the games you observed.
Everything I picked and looked at was perfect. But I don't know if one of you guys has I don't know if you guys know who won each game, but I have my bracket, and you can tell me what I've gotten so far.
I've got everything pulled up, and I've got it ready to go. Before we do that,
don't show me. Oh, look, that's him. That's Cockburn. Well, that's Deuce. Yeah, see, Kofi Cockburn, but they call him Coburn, which has nothing to do. Why? If I had known this, I would have picked his team, but I didn't know this before I watched the game, so I didn't pick his name. So watching him lose had nothing to do with me.
That's just an example. That's an example, because that was a very muscular man. That's an example of a guy growing up and just going, it's fucking Coburn, okay? And the kids just be like, all right, man, whatever you say. Like,
Sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm Cockburn. Yeah.
But before we jump into that.
Wait, but when you get to the NBA, though, when you get to the NBA and you have to get a jersey, you just tell the guys, like, they're like, how much money, like in high school. I know that they can't sell because they're in high school. What are they, in high school or college?
College.
They're in college.
They're in college, whatever they're in, man. I don't know what they're in. Whatever they're in, right? They're going to be like, hey, man, you got to be on the team. I get they can't take money, but you can say to the coach, you better leave CK out of my name off the jersey. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a little bit of negotiation as to be like, I'm Coburn now, spell it the way I want it to be spelled. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's something there. Why would he continue to have Cock on his jersey?
What's his name? One could argue.
But it's not, because he goes by Coburn, right?
Right.
But it's spelled that way.
And I would back Greg up on this, in that in our language, actually in the world's languages, there are many combinations of letters that produce a sound that you wouldn't think they produce, right? But Cockburn ain't one of them. You know what I mean? CK never just turns into an H. I've never seen it happen.
There was clearly a college kid who went, no, I'm not Cockburn. I'm Coburn. We don't pronounce the CK. Like, to get away from all abuse. Like, I don't care if you're big or not. People calling you Cockburn is going to eventually get to you. Right? I think.
Yeah. It could also be CBS, They could also be like, we can't have such foul language on our program. So, like when you watch a movie with curses on a television network and they change butt fucker to baloney,
Yeah.
it could be that, where it's like they are saying cockburn, but the powers that be are changing it to Coburn every time. Also, I'd like to say when you first said Coburn, I was like, well, that could be a school. That is the one great thing about March Madness. You find out about colleges where like, that's an institution. That's a place that's an accredited school.
Let me jump on that. Sorry, Anthony. Were you?
No, I was done.
So, one of the biggest upsets so far is Oral Roberts University, which is just a evangelical bastion, beat Ohio State, a 15 seed beating a 2 seed. I've been to Oral Roberts University, and I perform mostly in towns like Tulsa and just I'm kind of like
a lot of mouth colleges.
Yeah, I'm an old West medicine show is my tour.
Right. The news of the world kind of guy.
Yeah, but so I was in Tulsa and I was driving from the condo to Chipotle, and I was like, fuck, there's Oral Roberts University. I didn't know that guy had a university. I knew he was like a famous evangelicist. I drove around. That's not a college. It's just a goddamn giant golden church with giant, like, there's the biggest statue of prayer hands I've ever seen. And it's like, if you lose to a church, you should be ashamed. It's not a college. It's a church. And you lost to them. This is the YMCA. You lost to the YMCA.
Right. I'd also argue that Oral Roberts is one of these cockburn guys who should have just been like, stop calling me Oral Roberts. Just call me Roberts. Because Oral Roberts is the best guy who gives head in town. That's why they call him Oral Roberts, right? I don't understand why you wouldn't do. Yeah, those church hands are crazy.
Yeah, Mike's pulled up a picture. It's crazy. They just was like, it told some sculptor, I need a goddamn 100-foot tall statue of prayer hands, and he was like, all right, that's fine.
It should be illegal to teach. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I was thinking, what that does is you can't get into too much debauchery because you're always reminded of God. Do you know what I mean? Like, college is a time for filth and anger,
exploration into the oral.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a twofold because they named their college Oral Roberts, so everybody there, it's on everybody's lips,
right?
But and you see those big ass prayer hands, and you go, I can't do that.
It's so crazy to me that you'd go to a school where you're like, who do I trust teaching me something? The people who believe in God? No, you're already based on some wild shit that ain't true. Like, look, let's step aside, okay, with the whole being respectful of people's religions. Okay, look, it's not real. All right, God isn't real. So stop it. So if you're it's institute teaching something and you're telling people that there's a man in the sky watching you, I'm going to a different school. You think some crazy shit already. You got two gold hands.
Well, but you have to imagine. Okay, first of all, the Oral Roberts basketball team is probably like 3 white guys who are super heavy Christians, and then a bunch of other dudes who got a scholarship and didn't get a D1 scholarship anywhere else, and were like, fuck, I'm going to Oral Roberts.
Guess I got to learn lies then. Yeah. Guess I have to learn bullshit, Anthony.
Well, I'm going to become a dentist.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because, like, that's the point. And, like, I couldn't agree more with Greg's point. Like, what is the dental program at Oral Roberts? Like, you got to rub a little holy water on his gums first. Novocaine, don't be crazy with the Novocaine. It's just holy water. Like, it's like, what are they what's history?
Well,
Oral Roberts University?
Mike, if you can look this up, I don't know if you guys are speaking from fact or fun, but is there a dental program at Oral at Roberts? Because if there's not, it feels like a missed opportunity. If the name of your school is Oral, you got to be teaching about blowjobs or teeth. Those are the only 2 things you should be teaching about.
I feel like Oral was a very short-lived naming period. You had your Oral Roberts and famed pitcher Oral Hershiser, and then after that, there were no Orals. I think people caught on pretty quickly what Oral was about and was like, leave that to the Oral B or oral sex.
Yeah, man, you're catching some heat in high school. Easy heat too. All right, so this is Oral Roberts. This is what they offer as a school.
Mike, I think you just need to tell us. He's showing us a graph. Just tell us.
They have a lot of biblical things, but they do have biomedical.
Did you say biblical things?
This is what they've got a lot of biblical study, but this is what I want to talk about. This is what are they doing teaching biomedical chemistry? You can't. If your views are that of an evangelical Christian, fine, whatever. You can't teach biomedical chemistry. Well, I'm never getting a skin graft from a goddamn evangelicist, if that's the word.
They can't say magic class. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they have to say biomedical chemistry, and then you get there, and then they just tell you a bunch of stuff, a bunch of tricks that Jesus did. But you can't outright just say that. So you gotta,
we're so into like respecting religion that it becomes second nature to be like, oh no, that's okay, they can learn that. But understand, to a man who is now so far into just thinking it's all bullshit, you could teach a Spider-Man class in that school. You should be allowed to teach a 4-hour lecture on Spider-Man because it's the same. You're getting the same shit out of it, if not more, from Spider-Man because the fucking morality is updated in Spider-Man. I know, Mr. Atheist Greg, angry again.
Well, no,
angry again at the religious institutions.
No.
There he goes.
I've increasingly changed my position from that. Look, I don't give a shit if you believe in a God, a man in the sky, whatever. I think organized religion is for almost across the board evil and has done more damage to this world than it has done.
But I have to come to terms with your first point. You think it's okay for people to just believe in bullshit?
I think it's okay.
And say it to other people, or just believe it to themselves?
No. That's where I draw the line. Don't fucking think your job is to spread this thing. Yeah, don't think your job is to spread this thing. But here's where I come more and more onto Greg's side. All right, and this is classic March Madness discussion. Here's where I come more and more onto Greg's side. Right, if you believe in a Christian God, if you believe what was written in the Bible, then you literally believe that millions of children, billions over the course of the years, who are not Christians are burning in hell for eternity, whereas a serial killer, a rapist and a serial killer can eat his last meal, call a priest over, say he's sorry, and go to heaven.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
That is a psychopathic. That is either an evil or a psychopath of a God.
Well, that makes sense because if God looks, I was telling this to Anthony last night, and Anthony, jump in. I think
it was 2 days ago you were telling me this.
No, it was yesterday. Yesterday we talked.
No, we did talk yesterday, but this is where I'll jump in.
Yes, please.
This actually happened 2 days ago
when we had our talk.
Yes,
I was sick, but 2 days ago was I sick?
No, I don't know. Yesterday we had Shaqy's birthday party, and we didn't talk after that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So 2 days ago, I stand corrected.
There you go. And thanks for getting me involved. I'm so happy to provide that background information.
No, because I know when I get passionate, I'll just scream for a while, and then all of a sudden, no one's been talking for an hour, and I haven't said anything fun. I've just said a bunch of crazy things about religion.
Well, don't ignore. I screamed for a little bit there too, in cutting Anthony out. We both cut him out.
I was look. Sometimes I'll be like, man, I'd love to jump in, and then other times I'm very happy to just be eating popcorn on the sideline.
You're a great passenger. You're a great passenger.
I didn't get a ton of sleep last night, so I'm a little woozy. So feel free to scream at each other about religion for a half hour on this basketball podcast. Go for it. I don't care.
Sometimes, as a train conductor, I like to look back at the people in the back and go, "Hey, who wants to drive for a while? I know I've been driving for a long time. I know you're sitting there comfortably, but get your hands on these wheels."
Yeah, and I was just like, I'm so happy to be staring out the window right now. I'm kind of groggy. I'd rather not take over the train. So yeah, go ahead, Greg.
But back to Brennan's point about this idea of, and this is what I was talking about Anthony about, is it like, now the idea of God forgiving killers makes so much sense, especially because in the view of a man who looks at Earth, who's an eternal factor, he's been alive forever, looking at death isn't going to matter, right? Because he's like, look, I know everyone's either coming to heaven at some point. I kind of think that more people would go to heaven in his eyes, because who gives a shit? Because murder doesn't matter. Murder doesn't matter to him, because why would it matter? Your life is over in a millionth of a second, and then you come for eternity into heaven or hell. So yeah, I think a sociopath God's like the idea of God just sitting there being like, look, I don't give a shit what you guys do as long as y'all love me, makes way more sense than him caring about rape, murder.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Any of that stuff, because he's just like, so if you murder people, then you're about to get the electric chair, and you just go, and then the priest goes, hey man, you want to be forgiven? And he's like, yeah. God's like, yeah, of course, forgive him. Everyone's coming up here anyway. I don't really give a shit. As long as you like, I don't want you up here unless you like me.
Well, that's
which makes sense.
That's exactly my point. He's either a psychopath or evil, because, like you said, I think that makes sense. But then there's children. If you read the Bible literally, there's children, millions of Muslim, Jewish, whatever else, children who die, and because they're not Christian, they burn in hell for eternity. So it's like, you're a lunatic, man. Like, and
there's arguments on that, though. There are arguments in the Catholic. Sorry that this is the conversations I've had with my father, who I honestly think he changes the Bible to whatever he wants to say. So I can't confirm or deny. But my dad always just says it like, no, for them it's not that. They're not going to hell. They go to heaven too. And then I guess they get to a certain age, and then God goes, hey man, do you like me now? And then those babies get a chance to be like, yeah man, you're fine. He goes, all right, wait, hang out up here. No hell for you. I think, which is a convenient argument, and it's just and I think that makes sense, and that's good, but it's also just not true. Like, if you're a Christian, none of it's true.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying if you're a Christian that believes the word of the Bible, like word for word, that's not how it goes. This guy's a maniac. But let's and that rolls right into basketball.
Now hang on, I'll take the wheel for a second.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to drive anymore.
I could be called up to the cockpit for just a second.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, what designer, creator? They're always nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs is nuts.
Right.
What do you think of a guy that not only didn't create the iPhone, he created the universe?
Yeah.
You don't think that guy's going to be a flawed individual?
Well, it's a perfect reality to what you're saying, Anthony. Right. And I've done some thought on this. We are built. God said that we are made in his image, right? And if you think of anything that's ever existed, the creator usually is less than the created, right? We are about to create machines, which will in turn be greater than us. They will be faster, smarter, be able to do tons of things. I think God just might be a retarded person, right? Who made us, and not say retarded, but half a brain. Like maybe he made us, and then we're better than he is. I don't know what better means, but the idea that why would you, if you have all the power in the world, why would you create something not as good as you? Right? Why would you make something that couldn't think as fast, be as smart, have as much knowledge? You create things usually to solve problems. What problems did we solve for God? That's what you need to think. That's what I need to think.
Yeah.
Also, none of it. None of it
exists. Maybe God couldn't crack a TV,
Yes.
He's been trying for years. Maybe, I mean, that could be it. Maybe God looked at us and he was like, this shall be my entertainment because I can't build a television.
Yeah, and also
then we came along and we built a television, and then he went, shit.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, maybe he did have TV, but maybe it was
not a lot of channels.
Maybe he was like, God, man, there's no shows.
You guys are getting dangerously close to a pilot I'm writing, so please bear down. Huh?
Yeah.
Every show I got to write myself. Could somebody come up with The Wire, for Christ's sakes? And then that was... we're like his ant farm, but the ants are just better, they're better.
He doesn't get story or structure. That maybe also too why the Bible is not written that well. You know what I mean? He had a shot. He took his hand at story, but it wasn't very good.
Right. Which is so funny to me, to go to a college and one class do Bible study and the next class do story structure, and then have to be like, man, that last class is really fucking crazy. He is not using the Dan Harmon circle of story circle that he uses. Or whatever.
There's no stakes. There are no choices.
Yeah.
Anyway, characters are underdeveloped. I don't know anything about salt. Wasn't that one of the guys?
Yeah. I took Bible study at my non-religious college as a history/English course, and it was very interesting because it was so different than what I assume would be a Christian Bible study, because the professor was basically like, so at this point the snake is talking now. snakes can't talk. So what do we think that meant? Whereas I think in a Bible study class, they're like, the snake's talking. This is crazy. This guy was just like, now snakes can't talk. So what do we think the writer was trying to accomplish?
Well, that's the teacher just saying, what the teacher was saying is, hey, so this is all bullshit, right?
Right.
I don't believe any of this because we all know snakes can't talk, but he leaned into that sentence to really drive something home, which I find fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It is crazy, though. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this because, well, I think all three of us had the same situation where I was raised Catholic. And so I believed it. And then it was very hard and scary to slowly stop believing it. And then once you stop believing it and the further you get away from thinking it's true, just the more crazy it all becomes, right? Like, I don't know, because I think that there's people who were born atheists and they just go, oh yeah, no, that's silly, but I want to be religious freedom. And then there's people who are still religious and they never question it. But like, once you let it, there's a real experience to letting it go. And then the further you get away from it, the more you look back and go, well, that is wild that I thought that was real for a while.
Well, Anthony, what was your religious experience growing up?
Yeah, I never, I thought I didn't really see it as real. I'd be told about God and these things and like, but the actual stories, church was very boring. So I was never really paying attention. And then CCD, the same. And I kind of just looked at them as stories. So I didn't really put much stock into that because they didn't really teach it in school. It didn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. There was like, oh, I spend all this time learning real things that happened on planet Earth for a lot of hours. Like, that's 5 days a week, 8 hours, whatever that is. But then this mythical stuff is like an hour every week. It just didn't make sense as to like the importance of it didn't add up to me that it could be real. So I was more like, oh, I kind of saw it as like, yeah, this is just a thing you teach kids. And then eventually you just stop. But some adults like still like in my head, I was like, maybe there's some adults that still believe in Santa Claus and like good for them. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really think of it too much as like a real thing for grownups.
That's such a funny view of Sunday school as like 1.5 hours a week of trying to negate what you've learned 8 hours a day for the previous 5 days a week. Like, hey man, whatever they told you in history class, not true. Dinosaurs, ridiculous.
Right. And to me, I'm like, well, they're spending like 40 hours with that stuff. They're only giving you an hour. Yeah. So I'm willing to guess that what you were saying isn't real. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's like a lot of stories, and I'd love for any fans or anybody listening to this who might have this experience to message me. But there's like stories of like Jewish kids and religious kids who had to go to the Catholic school in town because it's like the public schools are so bad that like you pay for it. Like the Catholic schools are just better schools. Right. So they may have to sit through religious class and just be like, man, you're trying to push this shit on me. And like everything I know is telling me that this is all bullshit. But like you still have to listen in class to that. Like I wonder what that experience is like. Because
don't have to wonder. School ties, okay? Brendan Fraser tells you the whole goddamn experience. Star quarterback, Jewish, has to go to the Catholic high school because that's the best football team around. Mm-hmm. Has to live through it. Rough.
School ties is about like putting people's teeth on. I always mix up School Ties and American History X for some reason.
Very similar
well,
films. That's
actually, yeah. They are similar.
Are they?
Yeah, they tackle similar subjects. That's also like, and I just hated they made them dress up in outfits too. And this is a weird thing.
Uniforms? You mean school uniforms?
Yeah, I guess I mean uniforms.
To be clear? Okay, just to be clear. Sorry.
Yeah, outfits is a strange way to put it. Sure. But and then that's weird. This is a side thing. But then the school girl outfit becomes like a trope of like, hey, this is a turn on. But you never really hear much about the school boy for women. That's not.
They're never like, I want to fuck that guy from AC/DC.
Yeah.
Well, the schoolboy thing is very big with gay men. Just so you know, I think it's men will make anything sexual. For women, it's just about like finances and being responsible. But I think for men, it's like whatever you put on will make it dirty.
Right. Well, and we've talked about it on the podcast before. The craziness of the Catholic Church. It's like, all right, you went with plaid skirts and knee socks, fine. But it's been a sexual symbol for 30 years now. Like, change it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what's going on. You've got your finger on the pulse of the nation. Like I mean, it's fine to make the initial mistake, but once that Britney Spears video came out, go, hey, how about pants? Or a longer skirt.
Yeah, man.
But I had
real quick, but just to step back to that thing real quick, is that the dress is built on easy access for sex or easy access to taking a shit. Right. So you have to have the school presidents being like, no, it's so they can take shits. Like that's the only reason you can still have the school uniform is the female dress. And he has to sit there and be like, we don't want these women pissing their pants in classes, shitting all over the hallways. What do you think? We're crazy? And then they just go, well, what about the boys? And they go, the fuck the boys. Like that's really just. Yeah, I just had to add that part, Brendan.
No, it's absolutely right. So I think I had much less religious experience than either of you. Because I think my dad was part of a generation, basically just a generation of Catholics that especially in foreign countries. Well, yeah, he went to Vietnam.
Yeah, and we're like, there is no God.
There is no God. But then on top of that, like, I mean, he wasn't even sexually molested or anything, but he just grew up with fucking nuns hitting him, and it was just like, yeah, fuck this. So like we only went on Christmas and Easter. And I think it was like this idea in my dad's head, like, I don't know, just in case. Like, just in case there's something going, I'll give him a little sprinkling, and then that eventually just stopped. So I didn't really have much of any Catholic. I was baptized, and that was totally to appease my grandparents and my Irish relatives. Nobody gave a shit in my family. And then the most fucking religious experience, and thank you guys so much for turning into Bracketology, the NCAA breakdown show.
We're still on Oral Roberts.
The religious experience that I think most shaped me is, I don't know, I was probably like 9 or 10, and I was visiting my some cousins of mine that were on my mom's side, so they weren't Catholic, they were Lutheran or whatever. And I went with them to but what's it called, Vacation Bible Camp or whatever. And I remember even being that young, being like, these motherfuckers are weird. Like, the kids are weird. The counselors are weird. This whole shit is weird. Like, we're playing kickball 1 second. The next second, they're telling us about hell. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You don't tell 10-year-olds about hell. And I remember it was a real turnoff to the whole goddamn thing. And I was just like, I'm out, like, for life, I'm out. Like, I still think the top religion is Shintoism, and those guys basically think like nature is God, and nature could be viewed as science. So to me, I'm like, those guys are pretty much the only ones nailing it.
Well, look what you're doing, though. You're just trying to make a religion a reality. You have to do all this gymnastics to make a religion a reality, when the real religion should just be science, right? Why do you always need they always need a magic thing to happen for it to be? It's like, why isn't science just the religion, right?
Well, that's what
happened.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Shintoism is the closest thing to saying like we worship science, because it's now, sure, they've thrown a few demons and shit, and a lot of Japanese people kill themselves, but that's besides the factor.
I think there might be, I mean, this is just some hooey, but I think there might be some other kind of external factor. I just think that science hasn't figured out what that factor is yet. You know what I mean? In terms of energy, matter, whatever this quantitative element is, I think there is probably something. I just think we don't understand it yet.
Right. And that's what science states, right? Like, what is, what is the higher whatever? But the idea of like a higher power or someone who's sitting there watching us, sure, there might be someone watching us, but it's not the ones in any of these books, right? It's like, and if they are, they didn't get it on purpose. They just completely randomly guessed what it actually is. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only way it's, I mean, yeah, sure. there are things that science doesn't yet understand, but none of it is,
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. I always think what's interesting is like when you have a debate between like an atheist and a believer, right? And it's seen as like, well, they both have to prove their points. And it's like, no, they don't. Like if me and you, Anthony, are standing on a street and you say, I just saw a fucking 17-legged guy that was 30 feet tall walk by, and I say, I didn't see him, the burden of proof is on you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to prove I didn't see him. Right. You got to prove you saw him. Like, it's like the atheist shouldn't have to prove anything. You got to prove your deal is real. You know, you're the one saying snakes talked and the guy died and came back. That's on you. Like,
well, the atheist came first. You know, that was it.
The atheist's point is, everything you see around you, that's what I believe. And then the religious guy has got to say things that you does not see or believe. You know, it's like, well, what do I believe? I believe, well, look over there, throw it up, goes down. All right. You know, it's like, that's fine. Anyway, Gonzaga versus Norfolk, I had Gonzaga.
And that was that was a good pick. Let me pull up my thing and
overwhelming one seed.
Yeah, I'd like to have you explain your picks, but let me make sure I have my bracket.
Yeah, pull it up, but I can talk while you're looking it up.
Yes, please.
Anthony, do you know why I picked? I want you to take a guess on why I picked Gonzaga over Norfolk.
Well, Norfolk sounds like a Lord of the Rings people that would be after.
Okay, be careful. I don't want to see these.
No, Mike. Get rid of that. Yeah, quick. He can't see that. We can't give him any.
Sorry, Anthony. Go ahead. So Norfolk, what?
Poor Mike, man. He's trying to do two things all podcast.
I know. God bless him.
Screamed at for it. I didn't even get to say hi to him at the beginning of this whole shindig. Norfolk, that sounds to me like a ring-wraithy kind of Lord of the Rings people. People that might be on the side of Sauron going after young Frodo and his prickly little ring. Gonzaga is such a fun word.
Yeah.
So that's why I would think you chose Gonzaga, because it sounds kind of like what you could say about boobs. Those are some great Gonzagas. Yeah.
Wow. Huge. I'll just throw out the real reason real quick.
Yes.
Is Norfolk was a bus stop I had to get off in North Carolina, which was very nice. But Gonzaga reminded me of Gonzalo Cordova, who was a comedian we knew, who was very nice. Also, I can't think of her last name, Gonzalez. She was our girl we went to high school with, Jackie Gonzalez.
Yes.
Also, who's so sweet.
Yeah.
So I had to go with, that was a 2-1 right there. Bus stop or Gonzala and Jessica, whatever. I had to go with Gonzaga.
And I got to say, those of you listening and putting your money down on the picks Greg's going to make going forward, this is what you want out of a picker. You don't want a guy who picks Gonzaga because, sure, they're the number 1 seed in the tournament going up against the 16th seed Norfolk, who they destroyed 98-55. You want a guy that really analyzes, the what's happening behind the names. And
I didn't know that's what those numbers were. I thought those numbers were like jersey numbers. Just numbers they picked.
That's great, and that's what our listeners want. That's how you get the pure outcomes.
Yeah. Who did you guys have? Did you guys do one? You didn't fill out the brackets, even though I told you I printed out extra ones.
Greg, and what's so funny about Greg is I haven't printed something out in 5 years. Greg printed out these brackets, and if you're going to print out these brackets, you go, well, you must be in some kind of big money pool to put in that kind of effort. Greg is in no pool whatsoever. This man is just the pure joy from filling this out was enough for him.
Yeah,
I love writing things down. With a pen and a paper, classic. Yeah. I don't like gambling because my family all have problems with it. Yeah.
But who did I pick for what? Those games?
Gonzaga, Norfolk. Yeah. Did you guys do a bracket?
I didn't do a bracket, but I can go with, what I would have thought or what
Yeah.
Gonzaga. I mean, I don't follow college basketball that closely, but I'm somewhat familiar with Gonzaga, and I think I've watched a little bit of their point guard, and he's excellent. So they're an overwhelming favorite. Like they are, from everything I've heard, they're like they're a very, very good, complete basketball team.
I would also say, and this is not a knock on you, Greg, at all, because I appreciate your purity. But I would also say, Anthony, you probably have a little bit more understanding of the craziness of a 16th seed beating a 1 seed in the first round.
Well, that almost never happens. And also Gonzaga this year, they're like an old Spurs team where they're just like this bulletproof college basketball team. So they're I would be very surprised if they don't win the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because this is what I hate college basketball, is that it's very hard for me to get in the rhythm of teams. And once I finally, like, I do the NCAA real hardcore once every 8 years, right? But by that time, the team is barely even a cent of what it was before. You know what I mean?
Tough.
Like every 4 years, you get a whole new team. You get kids going through puberty, you know, and it's like all of a sudden they're off, they're on, they get into girls, they get into drugs. The team's different, you know what I mean? But whereas the NBA, it's like you can get like 9 years of LeBron, you know what I mean? Or follow LeBron around. But, you know, Jimmy Wilkinson, that guy becomes a goddamn car salesman, and you got to. It's hard to follow that guy. He was a great 3-pointer as a freshman, and now he's a dad of 7. Right? Like, what the hell happened?
There are, you know, the argument that people make is like college basketball. It's pure. It's the real thing. They play old school ball, and to me, and like I'm sure a bunch of listeners or a few listeners, this might irritate them, but for me. Because I like watching an NBA game. For me, I watch a college game and I'm like, this is bad basketball. You know, like the best guy on one of these teams might make the NBA. Maybe.
They don't all make the NBA?
No, it's the NBA of all the
Greg's world they do.
Of all
I like to think they do.
Of all the professional sports, the NBA is the most exclusive because the rosters are so small.
Yeah.
That's why I think the NBA has such a divide between college and the NBA. Like, whereas football, you know, you got a 55 team roster, a 55 man roster plus a practice squad.
Well, you're writing off bowling pretty easily. I take note of that.
Well, no,
bowling teams are a one man army.
Yeah, it's a one man thing. Yeah. But I'm talking major sports. But yeah, you get into bowling, you get into field hockey. No one goes pro. That's rough.
Yeah, man.
They don't even have the league.
Yeah, you just have to stop. Doesn't matter how good you are at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I get mad sometimes because you watch a college basketball game, they played for 40 minutes. The score is like 15-10. And they're the top 2 teams in the league. And I'm not saying like I could ever I couldn't play at a high school level.
Right.
But, you know, but is how good the NBA is. And I get very upset because when then people will go like the WNBA is so boring. If you can watch a college basketball game, you'll be blown away by a WNBA game. They're miles better.
Yeah.
I think that I want to just get back to bowling real quick.
Yes.
I like a game that I think a game should incorporate drinking, you know, because when I go bowling, I get drunk. I think with bowling, you should add the amount of beers to your score. Right. So if you get a 300, but you didn't drink, it's like, that's just a 300. But if you got a 220, but you had 16 Coors Lights, you know, like you did a better game because you bowled drunk. You bowled crazy drunk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would tell you a little fact, and nobody's ever really, there's no proof of this. And some people think he was lying, but this might now become your greatest sports accomplishment there ever was, because to pitch a no-hitter in baseball is very, very rare. And I believe it was, Anthony, was it Doc Ellis?
We got a no going.
We got a no,
a big old ball.
Doc Ellis.
That's one of my favorite things on the internet.
Doc Ellis pitched a no-hitter tripping on acid. So that goes right along with your I mean, that's got to add to the score big time. That's 17 no-hitters.
Yeah, how is he just not in the Hall of Fame?
He should be.
Yeah, I don't understand that. One game alone, that's such an accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's why we got to create the Hall of Fun, Anthony.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. I took an anti-anxiety medication the other day. It's not even a Xanax or anything like that. This is a light thing. I almost fell down going from my bed to my kitchen. I can't imagine tripping on acid in front of a stadium and pitching a no-hitter at a major league level.
You get all the anxiety is gone. The only thing you have to deal with is the demons that you're seeing. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, I've had I always, when I do stand-up, sometimes I might have a beer before, just enough to take away the edge if I'm feeling a little nervous.
Yeah.
And then you're just like saying whatever you want. You know what I mean? I also wonder, like, and I hate to promote drugs, but sometimes with pot doesn't make me funnier. Pot just allows me to sometimes grab the crazy shit that's going on in my mind easier and not worry about saying it. And so it's like becoming one with the middle of those. And the Hall of Fun, I think it should. I want to get back to that at some
the
point.
Hall of Fun, yeah.
The Hall of Fun. We should put people in like Doc Ellis should be in there. Somebody else.
Start with one.
Icky Woods, man. The Icky Shuffle. Guy that had a fun name and a fun dance. Number 2, Icky Woods.
The Hall of Fun.
Yeah. I saw, speaking of performing on drugs, I saw this interview with Jerry Garcia, and it was really kind of like sad, but he was like saying it as if it was like the best, and he was like very early on when they were kind of the Grateful Dead was kind of San Francisco based. He was like this guy brought this cake to a show at the Fillmore or whatever the big thing in whatever the big auditorium in San Francisco, and Jerry Garcia, of course, he used that like old school hippie terminology throughout the course of his life. So Jerry Garcia was like, "Now I knew this guy was a real freak, so I knew the cake was dosed. I knew it was dosed, but I can't turn down a cake. But I said to myself, I don't want to play all high anymore. So I took a little fingertip of the frosting, and then they said we put 800 doses of acid in the frosting, and then so he has a bad trip, and he was like, by the time he goes on, he said he thought the CIA and FBI were surrounding the show trying to kill him, and he was like, in his mind, he said, the only thing I can do is play for my life. and then he goes, and that's what I did for the rest of my career. And it's like, I don't know, man. I think you should just try and play like good, like, the whole rest of your career you're trying to play as if the FBI was trying to assassinate you on stage.
Yeah, I wonder too if the rest of the bandmates, like I would imagine he confided in them afterwards about what was going on, and I wonder if they were like, "That is the best you've ever played." they were like, "Let's hire some fake FBI and CIA people.
Give these guys
all the rest
overtime."
of the tour." Yeah. Jerry was on fire tonight.
I think just some FBI directors who were big fans, and they were like, "Send a couple of guys out there. Just you don't got to hang around. Shake them up a little bit. We'll get a better player out of it. It's not bad."
Yeah.
I told you the time I thought I was at my parents' house and I got high for like the first time ever, and I swore a bear was knocking on the window, and I debated with arguing. I think I told George, my stepdad, and I was like, I think there's a bear out there, and he was like, what? And I was like, is there a bear maybe trying to get in the window? And he goes, I don't know. He was like, huh? And I just, my mind went, get out of this, Greg. And I went, maybe not. And I just kind of walked away, but was horrified the whole night that a bear was circling the house. But
it's funny, those moments where another person can sort of like break through the highness and like make you realize, that's crazy. Like, you have to walk away. Like when I accidentally took too much ecstasy and went to the ER and told him my dick died. And then the lady just goes, what? And I just go, I gotta go, and just walked home, because it was like that breaks through the craziness where you're like, oh, George is saying how crazy a bear is. I'm gonna still believe it, but it's crazy. I gotta go.
I think once you see your internal fear out loud on a person's face that isn't in your world, you see it as what is happening. I had the same thing with the panic attack when the EMT showed up. I was like, oh, I'm a guy on drugs. I'm not not having a heart attack.
You did this for fun. I remember when we got really high that time, and I remember I just keep telling myself, you did this for fun. For fun. You're not having fun, but you did it for fun. And you got to remember, you did it for fun.
Yeah, you have to have that moment so you can have that moment. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, you're just gonna it's gonna build and build and build and build in your world, and eventually you're gonna be like, you're like, this is too much. I need to share that there's a bear outside, and then once you hear it leave your mouth, you're like, there's no bear. There's never a bear.
Or there is a bear, but he's not trying to get in. He's not trying to. He's not planning. And I told you back in the ER, they would do things where the doctors would leave and they'd have shifts. So like we had one doctor who came in and she was kind of a jerk, and she was very super high, high and mighty. And there was a kid who came in from William Patterson, because our college was right next to William Patterson, who got way too high, came into the ER, and then she went up to him and was like, this is what happens when you do drugs. And I don't know, maybe you'll be stuck like she was saying, giving him all the very worst case scenarios that could happen when you do drugs. The kids are freaking out. Her shift ends. Kid's still there. My other doctor friend comes in, who I love this guy. He walks in, he goes, no, you're just too high. You're going to lay here. I'm going to put some TV on for you. We'll get you some snacks. Just enjoy it. And if you feel like you want to go home, you can go home. But don't worry, you'll be good. And you just saw this kid change like immediately, because he was more along the camp of like, it's okay to get high, where she was in the camp of like, drugs are bad and I need to teach him a lesson, which is like, fuck you. You don't need to do that. Like, just let this kid have his experience.
Tonight is the lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He's in the ER. You don't need to scare him worse. Like, fucking guys. Yeah.
He wasn't like, let's check out the vending machines in there.
Yeah.
He came here freaking out.
The lesson of even him having a great experience of just like, oh man, I'm here. I'm kind of embarrassed. These doctors saw me is enough lesson.
Yes, exactly. I'm picking up a bed. I'm sitting next to a person with a bullet wound in their stomach. And here I am, just being basically having medical professionals come over and be like, do we need to get you a water, buddy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man.
How many times do you think there has been, because this is like worst case scenario, right? Like, how many times do you think there's been someone in like Greg's scenario, except there was a bear? Do you know what I mean? Where you're like tripping or you're on drugs so heavy, but like there is a guy in a tree outside with a gun, but you're like, there can't be, like, I'm going, but
dude,
it's like, you're trying to get assassinated. Like I
hate to bring it up, but I always said to myself, I'm so happy I wasn't high on 9/11. Do you know how many people were just stoned out of their minds in the morning? They walked up and they went, man, I think a plane just went into the world. Nah, you're just high. And the next thing you know, Rudy Giuliani is yelling, get in this jewelry store next to you. You got to be like, hey, man, you got to tell me what to do. I'm on mushrooms right now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that has happened. I mean, just sorry to add one more part to this, but when the COVID first struck, I was with Nathan McIntosh at the Borgata, and we were both super stoned watching the news like, man, this is kind of crazy, huh? Like just being like, are we high or this is like happening? And we were like, this is kind of happening. And we're like, all right, let's go buy some oranges. And then I bought 60 oranges at Target. Anyway, Oklahoma versus Missouri.
Let's see. Who'd you have there?
So
go ahead.
So you've picked out all your teams going down to the finals, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to do I want to kind of talk the first round.
Yeah, first. We've only done 2 games, Greg.
Yeah, we're pretty much done with the podcast. I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Missouri versus Oklahoma. It's always fun for me because Missouri has the movie Misery, which I didn't like. Right. Okay. Also, misery sounds miserable. It's all there, and I think there's like a miserable Missouri, if I'm correct. Right? Isn't there a town in Missouri called Miserable? Is Missouri a state?
Yes.
Missouri is a state. Yeah. Mike, just shout it out if there is a miserable Missouri.
Maybe it's like horrible Missouri or miserable. I don't know. Anyway.
Miserable would make more sense just for phonetically, I would think. But it sounds like a tourist trap.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, I have my old friend Tony Scholes who lives there.
Right.
Who is a guy in the action figure community. He's very sweet. Guy loves to smoke cigarettes and drink Pepsi. And I said, well, that's a winning combination for me. And Oklahoma is okay. So that was the sign to me Oklahoma's going to win. And I put them down. I didn't watch that game. I don't know who.
Correct. You were correct. And that's a close one because that's a Oklahoma versus Mizzou. That's an 8 versus a 9 seed. So those are really the toss-ups games right there. And you nailed it. A close game, 72-68 OU. So you are perfect.
Wasn't close to me because Missouri sounds horrible. So it was an okay win. What do you say?
There is a Misery, Missouri.
Misery.
Oh, wow.
Right. See? Well, who would want to pick that place to live?
Now, Creighton, UCSB. Is that next on your list there?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick on this. Michael Creighton. Jurassic Park. Going to win.
Right.
UCSB. Sounds like the military. I'm very anti-war. I picked Michael Creighton.
I watched a little bit of that game, actually.
How was it?
It was fine. I college basketball, even like, because sometimes you'll watch I'll watch because there's like an NBA draft prospect or like they're raving about some kid. Then you watch him and you're like, Yeah, man, he's nowhere near as good as LeBron James. So this isn't entertaining.
Yeah, but LeBron James was the best ever at 14.
Yeah, but they're UC Santa Barbara. That's the name of their team, and they're called the Gauchos. I guess that's their mascot or whatever.
Oh, I wish I had. Thank God I didn't know that. I would have. Go ahead.
Yeah, I watched these announcers. They just wanted to say Gaucho is such a fun word. Yeah. These announcers were working it in as much as they could. They're like every single shot there. Like they never mentioned Creighton at all, but they were like, "Ooh, tough possession for the Gauchos." Good possession for the Gauchos. Gauchos are looking all right. Like they were having a good time with it, which I get because they would
have had way more fun if they called them the Michael Creightons. Yeah, the Michael. That's a big. That's out there in the Congo. Takes a shot.
Yeah,
or something like that. You'll have more fun if you do it that way.
Yeah.
Also, I'm very interested in like what's cancelable and what's not cancelable because it's like. What's a gaucho? You break down that term, and you are just the University of California, Santa Barbara Mexican cowboys. That's what you are. That's what you're saying, and
where'd you get Mexican from?
That's what a gaucho is. A gaucho is the Mexican word for cowboy. I think.
Oh,
right?
Really?
I think so. Right?
I thought it came from the root. I thought it came from the root word gooch, which is Gregory the Gooch, as my dad used to call me. I was a gooch, so I thought it was like a goocho.
Greg always thinks everything is related back to his life.
Well, let me tell you this, Anthony, and I'm really having a hard time proving this wrong, but I'm starting to really believe that no one else exists and only I exist, and this life is really just. I mean, the fact that we had COVID, I told you, this seems like it's like the 8th season of my life. It seems everything I've ever dreamt of happening is starting to happen, right? So it's like it's hard for me to believe that other people exist.
Hey man, that's not insulting at all.
Well, yeah. I'm not saying that you don't, but I don't probably exist to you.
I believe you exist.
Real. Yeah. I don't think you're a figment of on some level, sure, we can get into consciousness and everything about that, but yeah, I'll mark you down as real.
You don't think I'm a perfectly written best friend character for you? You don't think I'm not Kramer and I wasn't cast when whoever created this?
Well, I would say no.
Well, that hurts as a friend.
It's funny. I'm intrigued by the hardcore atheist that believes in a sort of alternate created reality specifically for him, which is
right.
which is in a form like just the craziest of gods, a god that just made you and you're.
I'm saying I might be in a matrix that was a simulation that was built for me, but when we get outside of this simulation, guess what? God still don't exist. Jesus is still bullshit. All right, we're outside the simulation, just in another simulation. I don't know how deep the simulations go, but I'm kind of sure that this might be a video game.
That's what's interesting about a higher power, and you're listening to Bracketology, baby. That's what's interesting about a higher power, going back to our early conversation, is like, well, yeah, what is the difference? What if like we meet an alien race that's so far more advanced than us? Like, that's God. What's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, if you are in a simulation, that is a higher power, like it's like
you need to say highest power. I don't believe in a highest power, but even highest power is like where we are the highest power currently.
That we know, yeah.
I mean, we're not even the highest power because a big ass rock to the head is a higher power than the Three Amigos
or a meteor.
You know what I mean?
A meteor could destroy the whole planet. That's the highest power. The meteor. Sun. We have to hope that meteors don't hit our planet.
Love is the highest power, as my dad would say. And that's how you know God exists, because God is love. That's my dad does these tricks on me every time. He goes, do you believe in love? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, God is love. So you believe in God. And I go, what are you doing here? That is a wild move.
And then you got to go, well, what was going on with that fucking genocide that the Malagnanites pulled on the Stadiklanites on page 72 of, whatever fucking, the Bible's full of murder. He's got love.
Love hurts.
Yeah.
All right. As it did for Virginia versus Ohio. And I had to pick Ohio for Brendan.
And that's crazy because, again, huge upset, and you nailed it. UVA was a 4 seed. That's a 13 seed. OU's going against a 4 seed, and you got it right, man. Perfect bracket.
Right.
The bracket man, baby.
Can I ask, who did you have in that? I think it was. Oh, was that Ohio State and Oral Roberts? Was that okay?
Yeah.
And you had Oral Roberts, right, Greg?
Which one was that? How far down is that? I have to look because I don't remember all of them.
2 and 15 seed. I'm not sure where though.
Is that on the left side or the right side? I don't know how that works.
They were in the. They're in the Midwest.
Oh my god. Midwest.
Wait.
For the Midwest, I had Illinois versus Drexel. I had Illinois. Loyola.
Oh no, excuse me. They're in the South. It's the 2nd seed in the South. It should be on the bottom of your South.
I don't want to do all my spoils, but I'll tell you this: I do believe Baylor's going to go all the way because I love Baylor. But Oral Roberts versus Ohio State. I had Oral Roberts, of course, because Oral is funnier.
Wow,
amazing!
That's crazy. This guy is picking upset. That I mean, you don't gamble because you don't want to get into it. You could have made millions of dollars on those 2 huge upsets. Oral Roberts, and the odds on those have been crazy. Oral Roberts and the Virginia game. Yeah, those are huge upsets.
It's not an upset in the gambling world of people who pick funnier names. In the funnier names community, Oral Roberts was like 100-0. I don't think that other team even scored in the funny name game. You know what I mean? If you get Squiggly College versus Mr. Military, well, actually, that's a tough game. Those are
Mr. Military is pretty funny too. If it's just military, that you throw the Mister up front.
I would probably go with Squiggly though.
That's wow, man. That is, whew, boy. I don't know. I'm trying to rack my brain about what to do between Squiggly College and Mr. Military. And I still can't.
Yeah, it's a jump ball. It's going to be a nose finish. You know, when someone wins only by the size of their nose.
Yeah.
That's why I get happy about having a big nose. I never know if I'm in a running match with someone who's equal to me. I'll win because of the nose.
You win by a nose. Sure. Yeah. I have there's a book of shapes that I read to my daughter. You know, she likes to look at it. But one of the shapes they throw in there, it's all standard shapes, and then they go squiggle, and I have to tell her. Right. I go, listen, this guy's saying this is a shape, and he's drawn it out, and that is a squiggle what he's drawn. But many things can be a squiggle. So don't fucking go around your life thinking this picture is a squiggle. A squiggle's not an official shape. So the rest of these are official shapes you've been given. But don't go around thinking you know a squiggle as a shape just because he drew a caterpillar. You know,
squiggle is in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly. And she needs to know that early. I don't want her going around, thinking.
How is an S not a squiggle?
It is. It is a squiggle. Right. Exactly.
Is this an S? Versus a squiggle is just as hard as picking Mr. Military versus Squiggle College.
Yeah.
They're both very similar.
Yeah. So. And this is a squiggle that got its life together a little bit,
Yes. Yeah. He's got a job now.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit. And somehow the letter community has gone, we'll allow one squiggle. Yeah. Well, a couple squiggles. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
It's like a professional sports league and an expansion team. You know what I mean? Where we're just like, we'll do Jacksonville.
Yeah, right.
But I want to argue that in that same vein, the squiggle community was upset because they saw what happened with the V and the W.
Sure.
And they went, you're letting this guy, do 2 of these? Are you crazy? Yeah, and you. I want to say that U is the same as a V. It's just a little slightly different. All right? Sure. And then you're calling the W, which is really just 2 V's. It's the double V. That's probably a Mitch Hedberg joke from 1965, but I don't really care. It's a double V. It's not a W. And if you want to go a double W, that's 2 wins. And that's what I had when I went against Michigan versus Texas. I picked Michigan because Texas, Michigan, I was thinking of Michelin tires, and I had to get 4, so I thought that was a sign from the Great Bear that it was going to be there.
Now I should mention. This is. I
don't think anyone's counting on this as like a March Madness podcast.
I should mention, Anthony, when he picked Michigan over Texas, it is not Texas. It is. It is TXSO. I don't even know what that is. Texas South over. I don't.
That's my favorite. Like I said before, it's my favorite part of March Madness is when you find out you're like, that's a college. Like there was one of them, and I think they upset somebody. I'm not sure who. They might have upset Texas. Actually, it was like Alabama Medical Christian College.
Oh yeah, no, it's Abigail Christian. I picked her because I loved her.
Yeah,
Abigail Christian. Yeah, they beat Texas.
Right. Lots of these, you're like, what? They're not even generals in the Civil War. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys, they're like scoutmasters that somehow they named a college after them in some, podunk town.
How come the community colleges aren't allowed? Because I bet you Essex County College with Newark involved is gonna do, kicks and swivels around Kansas or Eastern Washington.
Because they would be allowed, I believe, if they were ever to be a Division I.
But how do you become Division
college? So I don't know what the criteria to become into Division I is. I think it's more size and how good you are.
I bet if it's a skill alone, Newark's going to do well. You ever played Newark? You know why? Because their fans will throw batteries at you. Ask Anthony.
Yeah, that did happen.
Cleveland Browns invented that. They were throwing batteries at their own team. They were throwing the dog pound was throwing batteries at everyone. And they were the first guys to realize, okay, what's something that's small enough to kind of get in easily, but it's dense. It's dense and it hurts. And they went, you know what? Dead batteries. Dead perfect. It's the perfect projectile. Yeah. We can get it into the stadium, but it packs a punch, because it's heavy for its size.
Yeah, I'm always with batteries. I'm always like, do I recycle these? Do I throw them out? It's actually a decent move. You know what I mean? You just throw them at professional athletes.
Well, I used to do a bit, and the bit was too sad, so I had to drop it. But like when I was a kid, you could feed the seals at
batteries
at the zoo. Well,
sorry,
stay tuned. You could feed the seals at the Cleveland Zoo. You'd buy like a little snow cone cup full of sardines, and you could throw them into the seals, which goes against everything zoos stand for. Like, don't feed the animals is the #1 fucking zoo sign. But years later, I was like a teenager. I went to the zoo, and that cart was gone. And I asked the guy, I go, why can't you feed the seals anymore? And he goes, oh man, it was bad. They just learned to eat anything people threw in there. So people were throwing batteries and stuff. God. He literally said that. And that my bit was kind of like, that's so crazy, because here's what's crazy about it is nobody just has batteries with them at the zoo. Like you thought of that at home. Like I'm going to fucking feed a seal a battery. Empty out the remote control. We're going to the zoo, baby. And
or that guy's Walkman just didn't work for the rest of the trip.
Yeah.
He's like, this Beastie Boys album, or see if an otter will eat this.
Yeah.
It's a hard choice.
Greg, we should wrap up pretty soon. You got one last pick, and then maybe later this week on the Patreon, we can kind of continue Greg's in the betting parlance of people, touts, they call them, people that sell picks, who most bettors hate these guys, but these could be Greg's lead pipe locks, they call them. I hear that on the sports talk radio. You got another lead pipe lock. How about this? How about I give you a game?
Just ask me and I'll tell you.
How about I give you a game that's undecided, that's actually being played as we speak. It might be over. But,
I want to know how I did. So just give me the ones that have been played already.
Okay. Let's take a look in the East, and let's take a look. How did you pick?
This is more fun for me to know if I got close.
UConn versus Maryland. UConn versus Maryland. That's a 7 seed in UConn versus a 10th seed. Con, it would just be on your list.
Oh, yeah. It just says Con versus Maryland. And I don't know what this says. It's longer. It says Maryland. I think I picked Maryland. But now that I know about this thing, that's probably not right. But I picked Maryland just because my friend Malik had a house in Maryland where Secrets was. And we would go to Secrets, Seacrets. And I once kissed 3 women in one night there. So you got to pick Maryland. 3 women one night. Anthony, I think you were there. Remember that? 3 women.
I was there.
That's how goddamn horny. That was crazy that happened in my life. And I just thought that was what life was at the time. I was like, I guess people just do this. Not realizing it was one of the greatest moments. Secrets was something, huh? We should go back to Secrets.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This is fucking unbelievable. Okay. We have a man who's picking purely based on sentimental personal reasons or silly names, and he has correctly picked every fucking upset in the tournament. Again, Maryland, the 10 seed, did defeat Connecticut. They won 60.
What chances Connecticut have? What they have? They have Joker's Wild. That comedy club sucks.
Owned by the Hells Angels. I was told.
As per my mind, I'm stacking the numbers here. They got no chance.
This is like Slumdog Millionaire.
This is crazy.
I don't know what that was, but sure.
This is
basically he's on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The premise of the movie is on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and every single question just so happens to lead back to some memory of his life in India. And that's how he answers every question. Like, if it was something else, he would have never had a chance on the show. It just so happened to work out this way. And this is a low stakes plot of Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
It's Greg's
Bracketology. It could be the highest stakes if you were putting money on this. This is crazy. But so that's been Bracketology / God Talk for today. I want to thank you guys so much. Please, if you have a little extra money, we're having a great time on the Patreon episodes, the kind of special episodes, the live episodes. Check out patreon.com/Rad DudeCast. I want to say we are going to be, and we haven't all talked about it yet, so I'm not going to announce it specifically, but we are going to have something very special in store when we get to 300 patrons. We're at about 256, somewhere in there. So when we get to 300 patrons, there is going to be a big bonus opportunity out there. So if you're on the fence, think about that. And then again, I hate to just keep bringing up the same damn item, but we can't keep the Charles Barkley Comedy Cookout sweatshirts, T-shirts, anything. We can't keep them in stock. So go to teespring.com/stores/Rad DudeCast. This stuff is so cool. You can be an executive producer of a show that didn't exist, but did it exist? Who knows? Because everything's a goddamn simulation. And then, of course, follow us at the Rad DudeCast on all platforms, at the Rad DudeCast, and check out our YouTube. And I would also say, he'll say this also, but I get great. I'm a YouTube watcher, as Greg is, and I get great pleasure from watching Greg's clips. Because I follow him. Greg's clips often come up in my feed, and I always love to watch him. So you check out, follow Greg on YouTube. My own personal plugs before I turn the show over. I will be in Provo, Utah, filming a little dry bar special Friday, April 9th. You can come to that if you're in Utah. I think the seats are limited because of COVID and all that, but it'd be great to have some friendly faces in the audience. I will then the next weekend we'll be at the St. Louis Funny Bone, and then I will be in Tulsa and Wichita the last 2 weekends. The last 2 weeks of April. I don't know which is which. Just go on the Looney Bin website. And I had said on this podcast, sorry guys, my plug's taking so long. I had said that I will be at Skyline in Appleton. That is postponed for the moment. I won't be there in April. Hopefully I'll be there at a later date. I'll turn it over to whoever wants to take it. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, man, I don't have any real plugs. I just want to say thank you. Thanks to everybody that came out to the live episode. And, if you're on the fence about joining the Patreon, I would say if you can scramble $10 a month together, the live episodes are worth it.
And is that good, Anthony? Can I go?
Yeah, man.
Right. In lieu of plugs today, I need to speak to a certain few people out there who need a message, and that is to my visionariums, and let them know that this week I remember to listen to the great King Bear. And I want everyone to take a moment that when the King Bear speaks to you, question it, and understand that it could be the son of a bitch beaver. So you need the son of a bitch beaver will come to you and he will make you think he's the King Bear, but he is not. He is the ego. He is the piece of shit. So you just remember, King Bear always looks out for others and what's best for everyone, and he comes from a place of love. Okay, if you feel as though there is, you feel a little angry, a little jumpy, remember that's the son of a bitch beaver. Okay, so let him remember the son of a bitch beaver's home is cursed, and his name is equal to that of an ass. Okay, the beaver is another word for ass, and his home is cursed. So remember, Big Bear. That's all I wanted to say to my friends out there. You know who you are, and we'll keep chugging if you keep pouring. See you next week.
Hey, coming in at $10 a month, the big time Tyson Monaghan, and he got the name. His original name was Federico. He beat Mike Tyson in a fight, gaining his name. It was a fight for name. So you've got Mike Federico is what formerly Mike Tyson, and Tyson Monaghan now has that name because he defeated Mike Tyson, also heir to the Tyson chicken fortune.
Shout out a new name from a man, Ryan M. We know his full name is Ryan Mister, also goes by Mr. So thanks, Mr. for giving us some money and making everything swell for us. God bless.
Next up, we got Fred Schroeder, $10 a month. Fred Schroeder is actually a cat that is that cat ate so much goddamn canned tuna fish, it became a person. And now Fred Schroeder works as a dental assistant somewhere outside of Omaha, but he won't disclose his exact location because of his own paranoia.
Thanks for those 15 bones a month, Justin, or I like to call him Justin. This guy rules.
Nicholas Garcia, God bless him, man. I love this guy because he always uses his catchphrase, which is Garcia later, you fucking tube heads. And then he jumps on a motorcycle and drives out of town. Garcia later, you Finland piece of shit. That's it? Nice.
Yeah, easy.
The Rad DudeCast is hosted by Anthony DeVito, Brendan Eyre, and Greg Stone. Original music by Brian Zippert. Produced by Mike Suarez. Executive producers Brendan Eyre, Greg Stone, and Anthony DeVito. Executive producers Matt Kleinschmidt and Robert Kelly for the Laugh Button Podcasts.